This is VA to VA, and we're here today with Susan and Susan Mershon with Techie Mentor. And she's, I know, a great teacher. Many of you all have taken her courses, and so we're just really excited to have her here with us to talk about hiring subcontractors and things. And I don't want to say hire, I know we've been over that. So we want to say when you subcontract other VAs or even in general when your employment practices. And so we're going to talk about mistakes to avoid today. And so Susan, just want to give it to you for a minute if there's anything you'd like to say before we get started.
Okay, well, just hello, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here on the VA to VA. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm ready to roll whenever you guys are.
Okay, great. And of course, Nanette's here with In Essence. She's on our panel. And Lisa won't be joining us today. Unfortunately, she had some other plans, but we'll miss you, Lisa, but we're glad that Susan can join us today.
Right.
So to start out, we just want to talk about some of the mistakes to avoid. And one of the things that we wanted to ask you, Susan, was what are the top 2 mistakes that you see team leaders making when they're building their own teams?
Okay, so just so I'm clear with your terminology, all right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Team leader, is that the owner, or is that somebody that's working with the owner to manage the team?
Generally speaking, I see it as the owner
is
building the team, but I guess as they build it, it could also be, even a manager of it, but I would say the owner.
Okay, so because to me those mean 2 different things, so I just wanted to be clear. Sure. Okay, so we'll talk owner first of all. So the top 2 mistakes, I would say the number 1 mistake that I see most often is people don't take enough time to do due diligence. Even if it's a referral from a friend or a trusted colleague, and we usually trust people, so we take their word, which is fine. But when it comes to have somebody being part of your team, they're your business. They're the face of your business. That's your reputation. So even if it's from a trusted colleague, you still need to do your due diligence with the person or persons. So I've seen people that say, oh, yeah, okay, Nanette, I know Nanette, she referred this person, it's perfect, and you put them on your team and you let them go. They could be perfect for Nanette's team, but maybe not your team, right? And it has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with the skills and the type of team you're building. So you need to make sure that you do your due diligence. Ask for references. Check the references. I see who ask for references and then never do anything with them, right? And obviously references are different now than if you're applying for a job, right? Because when you apply for a job, you can only ask, and I'm talking United States here because that's where I am. When you apply for a job and ask for references, there's only certain things they can tell you. There's only certain things you can ask and they can tell you. When you're working with subcontractors, that's kind of out the window, right? Obviously, you want to stay within the professional realm, but so do your due diligence, ask for references, and if they're going to be doing some type of design work for you, why not look at what they've designed? If they've done websites or logos or banners or any kind of design, everybody has or should have a portfolio that you can see. If they're doing technology, which obviously is near and dear to my heart, test them. And I know people roll their eyes and go, why would I test somebody? Well, if you're going to be on my team, I'm going to ask you to take a test. And if you don't like that, then maybe you're not best for my team. And that's okay. Because there are too many people out there that say, yeah, I know how to do Infusionsoft. And they may know how to do a little, but not everything. And for me, this is my business. I worked very hard to get my business where it is. You want people that can represent and continue to represent your brand professionally and accordingly. So it all comes back around to really doing your due diligence and making sure they meet your skill set, your needs, your brand, whether they come from a referral or whether you find them on social media or whether you've worked with them on a team before. So I'd say that's that's kind of almost 2, if you will, but that would be the biggest mistake I see most people make. The other thing is, kind of touching on that, is if you're hiring people, and I say hiring, sorry, habit, if you're bringing people on your team, and they're going to be doing technology-based things, it's important that they know the technology. Right now, I know a lot of people don't know the technology they're hiring for, but then you should have somebody help you make sure they do. And like I said, that's near and dear to me because I am the Techie Mentor. I teach technology. But not only that, when I was a VA and had a team, I had people coming to me going, well, I hired somebody to do Infusionsoft, and all they did was mess it up. And so the client was very wary about hiring people for technology because people said they knew it when they didn't. And I understand you need a client, and I understand that sometimes you have to take a risk, but when it comes to working an online business, people, that's their livelihood. Their entire business is online. And if you go in and you don't know what you're doing, you're putting their business at risk. So I would say just make sure they have the skills that you're looking for as well to meet whatever your brand and your business is looking for.
Great, Susan. I know those are really important things, and I've actually had that happen to me. So that very thing that you're talking about, I actually had that instance where I thought I knew, this is, you think you know the person, you talk to them on social media, you love their reputation and how they are and all, but then when it comes down to it and you hire them for a job, they don't exactly perform like you expected them to. And it doesn't work out, or and then it gets awkward because you still like them and want to hang out on social media, but at the same time, you just can't have them working that job for you because it is your business and it is your reputation, and so that is very important, and those are absolutely things I learned by making the mistake first. So you're exactly right. And we were talking about the technology and all of that too, which is absolutely important. How would you suggest, this is just going off what you were saying, but how would you suggest if I don't know Infusionsoft, but I have a client that wants somebody for that, so what would I do to test them? What would be the best way to know?
I would, okay, so if you're going to hire somebody on your team to do a specific technology, I would recommend reaching out to somebody that knows it and asking them to help you come up with some questions or ask them to show you how to do something or write out, how do you create a simple campaign, right? And they should be able to write, okay, they don't have to write, click here, but they can write, okay, here's the strategy, here's what you need to do to go from A to B, you know what I mean? That's what I would do. I would reach out to somebody who knows the technology and can help you form the question for you to be able to do that. So for instance, if you were to say, okay, I want to hire somebody who knows Infusionsoft, you could come to me, for instance, and say, I have somebody who wants to know Infusionsoft, so I could certainly help you come up with a questionnaire that would allow you to see whether or not they've done it. Now, obviously, you would need them to look at the answers too,
right?
Since you don't know the technology. But that's what but remember, I come from a training background. I also come from a project management background, and we're used to working with what are called subject matter experts, and those people know what they're talking about. So that's kind of the frame of mind I bring to my business, is that I want to make sure these people are not necessarily experts, but they do know what I'm asking them to get done well enough to do it for my business. Does that make sense?
Understood. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I think that it's almost even worthy of paying that person to have them, check that other person out, just so you have a legitimate, wonderful, team together. So it's worth paying them and, an hourly rate or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't want them to do the test for free. No, I would never ask somebody who is going to be part of my team to just give me time to show me how to do a campaign.
Right.
And if you value someone's time, and everybody's time is valuable, then you should pay them. Say, I'll pay you what your hourly rate is, but I need to see that you can actually do this. And granted, I know some people, I've had some feedback on my stance on this, but you know what? You do what's right for you. This is what I'm saying is right for me and my business.
Right.
Because I have a reputation as a Techie Mentor. I don't want to take somebody on my team that doesn't know technology. So for me, this is how I would do it. My point to you is it's your business, your choice. But just make sure that you do the due diligence that's best for you to make sure you're covered for whatever skills you need.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And I was even thinking not just for the subcontractor to be paying, but the person that's helping you as well to vet them, I guess, or however you want to put it. But yeah, like if I said to you, Susan, I need you to look at this, then I'm going to pay you to look at that person for me.
For my time.
Tell me whether they're really. Yes, absolutely. Right. And I just wanted to be clear on that so that people watching understood. It's not that you're going to go to somebody and say, hey, look at this person for me, but you have to really value their time too.
Right. Everybody's time is valuable, so you should be willing to pay for any help that you get. Or you can, I know some people are like, well, barter. Well, I mean, if it works for you, sure. But you should get something in exchange for time.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you there. Totally. Okay. And then one of the other things that we wanted to talk to you about was, why is it so important to have systems, specific systems, in place before you start building that team?
Okay, well, I'm a systems person. So when I built my business, again, because I come from IT, and IT is all systems, plus I'm a project manager, which is systems upon systems. So when I built my business, I actually had systems in place, even though it was just me. And I had an operations manual, and my husband's like, why are you doing that? It's just you. I go, because I will have other people, and I can just hand them my operations manual and say, here's how I run my business. Instead of me having to explain to them and train them, they can start with that. So I think the biggest reason to have specific systems in place is because when your business takes off and you don't have those in place, you're going to Band-Aid and duct tape them together the best you can, and that's not the best way to do it. Because if you don't take time to put your systems together and you Band-Aid and duct tape them together, you're going to miss pieces and things are going to start falling through the cracks. And if you bring on a team member, right, to help you, there's certain things that you need to be able to tell them, like, well, how much are you going to pay me? When do I get paid? How do I get paid? How do I talk to clients? Do I talk to clients? What tools do you use? I mean, I could just rattle on forever about that. But those are the type of things you're going to run into, right? So you need to have systems to tell people, okay, here's what you do when you get a new client. Here's what I want to see from you. Here's when you do status reports. I have weekly team meetings. I want to know what you're doing. You're going to use teamwork to put in all your stuff. Any conversations you have with clients, I have to be copied on because I need to know what's going on, and so on. So all of that kind of stuff. Your decisions, right? Your business, your choice, but you really need to think that way now if you don't have a team. And all you need to do is just dump it in a document, right? It can just be, here's what I want to do for this, here's what I want to do for that, and then you can make it pretty later. But if you hire a team member, again, sorry, if you bring on a team member as a subcontractor, they may have questions or they may not. So I know I did some subcontracting work when I first started. And I know one team that I joined, I was their worst nightmare because they didn't have anything written down. I go, well, okay. So I just start rattling off questions, and they're like, oh, my God. Yeah, so you'll get a nightmare like me as a team member, right, who needs to know everything. You'll be going, oh, my God. So they're like, I realize now that I need to document because I'm like, okay, when do I get paid? How do I get paid? Do I talk to clients? And if I do, what do I need? So my point to you is you need to think through all these things and have them documented, and it'll just save you time and frustration. And that way you're consistent across how your team does work for you, all across the board.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty. You can just dump it on, you can write it down or dump it in a document and start to flesh it out. But if you get the basic structure in place, it really does make a difference. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and your team's time because you're constantly answering questions that should be documented. And what if you have 5 team members? Okay, well, member 1 asked the question on Monday, then member 2 asked it on Tuesday, and so you're spinning your wheels by answering the same questions over and over again. So, like I said, I'm a big systems person. I used to do those kind of things in my corporate life. So putting those things in place is just for standardization, and it shows that you're professional across the board because each team member does the same thing the same way.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, I guess one of the questions was, what do you recommend giving the reins to a new team member, or should they begin a trial schedule? Sort of falls into what you're talking about, and I would say I would think, and maybe you can confirm that, maybe you want to. I know in project management, maybe there's a little bit of. I don't know if you would suggest maybe being the front end to the customer until you're sure how this person works out before you give them the reins to talk to the client directly. I mean, is that, do you give them a trial run of just doing the project first?
I would give them something to do for me, for my business first.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so there's different ways that people run teams. And like I said, your business, your choice. You do what works for you. Mm-hmm. Some team members are client facing, so they have access to clients. Some do not. Some have and this is where I'll get off on a tangent, and I'll try not to, where they say they have a project manager that's in between them. And they're not project managers by my standard. Remember, I come from the professional world of project management. They're what I would call an operations manager. They handle the operations day to day. They manage the people. So they're kind of the client account manager type. They get the work, and then they assign it to the team member. The team member does it. They approve it, and then they give it back. So my long answer would be, if I have a new team member, I would give them something in my business to do for me. And I wouldn't just do one. I'd probably try them out for a couple weeks to make sure that they're hitting their deadlines and they're communicative and they're asking questions and they're going through the process correctly before I turn them over to a client. Now that's me. And when I had a team, I did it client facing, and then I did it with an operations manager. And I didn't know which one I actually liked better, because the operations manager can turn out to be a bottleneck. Right? Yeah. And it also comes back to trust. You have to trust the people on your team, and you have to trust your clients, right, to be ethical. And you have to make sure you're covered in your contracts for that kind of stuff. But so for me, I would always, I just have to see that you can do what you say you can do. And I know people who wanted to work for me, when I got to that point, they didn't like that. And I said, well, then it's just not a good fit for us. It's not right or wrong. It's just not a good fit. So if you're not willing to do those things, then you're not really what I'm looking for my team.
It's interesting because you talk about doing work for yourself first before you turn them out onto clients. And I guess I know there are some VAs out there, and I was one of these in the beginning probably, but who say, well, I need them to be doing the work for the client, and I don't have enough money just to pay them to do work just for me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So would you still at least give them a small project, or something you're overseeing heavily? Is that a valid concern?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So yeah, you have to kind of figure out how that's going to work. If you're going to put them on your payroll, so to speak, right? They're going to be working for you. You could give them something that could be a short term. It could just be like a 2-hour project, right? I mean, not a lot of money, but you have to weigh. Do you want to just turn them loose without knowing that they can do something, or the option is you could be that operations person, right? You could let them do it, and then you could review it and then give it to your client. So I chose to have them do something in my business because it was just easier for me than trying to do that whole operations piece. But you bet, you could certainly have them do client work, but you oversee it, right? You make sure that it's done properly and that you're the communication piece, if you will, to the client. The other thing you can do is there's always people looking for mentors. You can have somebody intern for you in exchange for mentoring them. See what kind of work they do. I have interns. I've had people intern for me for a long time, and I get to know them. And see, the benefit to that is that if they're on my team and they're interning for me, they're obviously getting training for me for free, right? They can take any training I do for nothing. They have me as a sounding board. Whenever they need me, they can say, Susan, I have a question, and I'll answer it for them. So they have my ear, so to speak. But in return, they're doing things for my business, but they're also learning how to work with clients. because I'm an online business owner. So are you. And a lot of things that you do, your clients do. So you could do that as an option, as long as it's a win-win for both of you. But here's the thing for me, is that the people who intern for me, I get to know them. And guess who's first on my list? And I am, just so everybody knows, I am relaunching my business. I am actually relaunching my VA business. It'll all be team-based, right? It'll all be team-based. And so the people that have interned me, they're at the top of the list because I already know how they work, because I see what they do for me. I know if they hit their deadlines. I know if they're proactive or not. So, you know what I'm saying? It's a win-win. They're learning, but then they're also on the front lines for when I launch my business. They're the first ones that are going to come up and get to work with my clients. Right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Absolutely. So, I think that's brilliant. I think
it's a roadmap.
A brilliant idea. But now, are they paid or unpaid interns?
No, they're not paid. Well, they're paid. Okay. I mean, they can take any of my technology training for free. They get me as a coach.
So they're being paid in the sense of education and learning.
Right. But that was the choice that I told the people who I wanted interns. Here's what you get in return.
Right.
I'm not paying you, but you're on the job training, and you get to learn technology, and you've got me to help you learn that technology. Right.
Absolutely.
So my point is,
I think that's a brilliant idea. I love it.
You could do that for yours. You could give your interns a roadmap that says, here, if you can help me send out my e-zine, if you can help me answer emails, here's what I'll do for you. You'll be first on the line. And those people can become your operations manager. They can become your right hand. Because you've spent time, I don't want to say grooming is not the word I'm looking for, but you've been building a relationship. Right? So
that trust.
Yeah. So I have 4 interns right now.
Wow.
I have 4. They all do different things. I'm a believer that not one person can do everything. So they each do different things. I have one that does social media. I have one that does client care. I have one that does technology. But they're doing it for me.
Yeah.
Right? So and you know, a lot of people are like, well, you know, you should pay your interns. Well, I am paying them. It's just not money.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it was a win for both of us.
And are these interns people who want to run their own business or be virtual assistants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these people, and the people that are actually interning with me, I've actually have a coaching program. It's called the VA Starter Kit that I started almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And everybody that is on my team is a graduate of that program, so I know them. I know what kind of work they do. I know they've been trained by me on how to run a business. So, you know, it's just like one thing kind of leads into another. And some of them want to be their own businesses. Some don't. You know, some people don't want to have their own business, right? Because it can be a headache. They'd rather just have that lifestyle that they love and work for, you know, be part of a team. So I have a little bit of both. And it's, like I said, it's got to be a win-win for both parties. And for me and for them, it's a win-win.
You know, that to me sounds good because I'm actually working with somebody who doesn't want to start her own business, but wants to have work at home because she can't take a full-time job.
Right.
And I actually gave her a portion of my client's work to do, so I can see how exactly what you mentioned, how she meets deadlines, how she does her work, and it was really a good experience for both of us. But you know, one of the things is that she's always pinging me. Do you have another job? Do you have another job? And I'm not quite, you know, I'm not having things flow that fast for her. So this is a good option, and I'm sure she could use some of the training because she's new into working at home, new into being her own contractor, and so that's probably something, you know, that I could offer her. That is, you know, a new skill.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And just how to run a business, because a lot of people who are VAs maybe never had the opportunity to be client facing, right? A lot of people work jobs their entire life and they don't ever talk to clients. They're behind the scenes.
Right.
There's a whole other world to working face to face with clients. You know, I was blessed enough that, you know, I was a software instructor for many years, so I stood up in front of people and taught them Microsoft Office, and I taught them Windows, and I taught them how to use a Mac. So, you know, that was my first experience. And then as I went on, I became a project management consultant, and I used to do software development. So I was always in front of clients. So for me, it was very easy to step into this job, or this business, right? Because I'd already knew how to talk. But my point is there's a lot of people who don't have that comfort level. What a great thing for you to help somebody, coach them to say, okay, here's how you talk to clients. Here's how you do prospect calls, because people are like, oh my God, what do I say to somebody when I get them on the phone? Well, just talk to them. It doesn't have to be a sales call. Just have a conversation. Say, well, how can I help you? And let them talk and interject, right? And I think a lot of people just need somebody to say, that's okay. That's okay to do that, right? It's okay to try. And so I think by just being that mentor and giving them the tools that they don't have is just it's always great to give back. I'm big on that. And to help people. What a great thing for you to do, Nanette. I mean, you can just say, here's what I'll help you with. Where are you struggling? How can I help you with that?
I think often too, Susan, we don't, for those of us who are in business for ourselves and everything, so often, and if we've had client contact like you're speaking of, we don't think about the basic steps that took. We don't think about teaching that to somebody, how to talk to a client, how to, those very basic tips.
Customer service.
We forget about that element of it because we're in our mind, we're down the road here. We forget to back up and teach that to somebody else. And I think, that's an important point. We don't even think about that sometimes.
No, and you could return the favor. You could give back by teaching those who don't have the luxury of having that experience what you know. Because we all have something to share that can help somebody else. And if you've got somebody on your team who really wants to have their own business, but they're really not sure, how to talk to clients or how to market or, any of that stuff, what a great thing for you to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, and with that said, what are some of the red flags to look for that may determine that the subcontractor is not a good fit for your team?
Okay, so you need to know, first of all, what do you want on your team? So this is kind of what I teach in marketing. What are the traits you're looking for, right? Not skills. Skills can be taught. I can teach you anything,
right,
technology-wise. But you have certain skills that you look for, traits that you look for. So I always say, look at your past life in whatever job you were in, and I can guarantee you there was somebody that you absolutely loved to work with. They were a rock star, that you love them, and then flip it around. I bet you money there was someone who's like, oh God, they're on my team. Are you kidding me? Because it wasn't not a bad person, just was not a good connection, right? Right. So if you look at the traits that they have, I bet you could make a list of the traits you like and the traits that you don't like. Now, I'm the kind of person that I can tell you what I don't like faster than I can tell you what I do, right? So for me, for my team, I need someone who's proactive. I do not have time to babysit you. I need you to be able to think forward and look at A and go, oh, yeah, here's how we get to B and C. But that's what I want. That doesn't mean that if you don't do that, that's wrong. Again, it's not a choice of wrong or right. It's traits that you work well with. I need somebody to rein me in because, man, I am all over the place sometimes. And I need somebody to say, Susan, focus. Stick to what you're talking about here because I'll go all over. And I have somebody on my team who she'll kick me. She'll stop it. Would you just, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I need that. I need somebody to rein me in because I am sometimes all over the place. And I'm kind of high-strung, right? Got a lot of energy. So I need somebody who's not intimidated by me, and she's not. Right? So those are the type of people that I need. I don't need somebody that wants to micromanage. It absolutely drives me nuts. So my point to this whole thing is it's trait-based. What are the traits that you like? What are the traits that you desire on your team? And if somebody, again, and I know I keep saying this, but I don't want people to feel bad if they don't have a trait that I'm looking for. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you're not a good fit for me. Same thing with my clients, right? I have wonderful people, but one person, she was very auditory, right? She had to listen to things, and she was very, very methodical. She moved too slow for me. Drove me crazy. Great person, but we were not good for each other because I talk too fast. She's like, whoa, 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 slow down, right? But that's who I am. So my point is that she was a wonderful person, but we were like, I was like Chinese and she was like German. We couldn't speak the same language. So It's got to be the same thing with your team. It's trait-based. What are the traits that you want? So I would say write down the traits that you desire, or write down the traits that you don't want based on your experience with people you've worked with in a previous life or on another team or even a client. That to me would give, there's your red flags. Do you know what I mean? But also red flags would be constantly missing deadlines, constant excuses for not getting work done. One of the worst things that anybody could ever do is just drop off the face of the earth. So my point is that you have to define what your red flags are, because it's all based on the traits that you want to work with, right? So my red flag may not be your red flag, right? But there are some, as far as tasks are concerned, right? You know, yelling at your clients. That would be a big one, right?
Yeah.
Using unprofessional language. For me, you know, social, you know, I'm old school, right? The stuff that people put on social media absolutely drives me crazy, because I'm like, why do you say those things? Because people can see that. Right. Your clients can see that. Your friends of your clients can see that. You know, and I have been, people bait me sometimes, and if you catch me in the wrong mood, I will respond. And I'm like, but I've learned to stop myself, because I will, you know, you get defensive, right? But my point is for a red flag for me is I look at social media. I watch what people say. And I don't want somebody on my team that's going to fly off the handle on social media, right? Because clients see that, and that's a reflection. Bottom line, as a business owner, as a team owner, they're a reflection on you. Right. Because if your clients see it, they're going to go, do you know what Tammy said on social media? Did you see how she said blah, blah? You know what I mean? Right. And for me, when my clients, you know, one of my clients, actually several of my clients, I'm still friends with my clients. I haven't been a VA in over 2.5 years, but I still see them on social media. I'm still friends with them. So my point is that my clients would come to me and say, Susan, do you know what Nanette said on, I mean, they would come to me. And I go, oh, you know what I mean? So to me, that's a red flag. Okay, so I mean, that was kind of a long answer.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have a right-hand man in person that you can rely on if you go away? And if that, did you groom them following those steps to get them to that point?
Well, I don't now,
okay,
because nobody can actually train and do what I do.
Right.
But I have somebody who is my client care manager. So she, you know, it was very hard for me to let go of those emails that, you know, because they all come in as Susan, because people are used to dealing with me for the last few years. Well, they're not dealing with me now, you know. But yeah, for now, if I had to step away, I know my team could handle what needed to be done. But when I was a VA, I had what I call trusted partners. That's what I call them. And they were both people I worked on teams of others. So one I had subcontracted with, and one was on a team of one of my clients. She did something else. We became friends, but I could see how they worked because we worked together in tandem. Especially for the one client, we worked together to do things, and so I could see what type of person she was, and so we just had a connection. And then the other person knew the other. You know, we all kind of knew each other, and we all kind of just put it all together. And so yeah, the long answer would be yes. We ended up being trusted partners for each other.
Right.
So when I stepped away from my business, like when my father passed away, I had to step away, and my clients already knew about my trusted partner. They stepped in. And most of the times my clients never used them, but just knowing that they had somebody to go to if they needed somebody made all the difference in the world. And they had two, right? And so we could take vacations because the other person would, you know, we would kind of have to figure out, okay, well, who's going when, but it worked. Because the biggest issue a lot of people have is working with a solopreneur is that they get sick or something happens, life happens.
Right.
Your clients are left sitting, but your client's business continues to move even if you're not there. And most people lose clients because their clients will find somebody else to fill in, and then they just stay with them.
That's very true, because I haven't lost clients, but I've had, you know, most people know I'm disabled, and I like to hire other disabled professionals, but on occasion in the winter is the worst time for me because I do get ill sometimes. And then I've also had some family things come up. And it's hard as a business owner to say, okay, well, I can trust this person. And honestly, about the time I trusted somebody to be there, that's when they left, you know. So it is hard to find that person that you can really say, okay, I'm confident that they can do this, you know. Otherwise, you just feel like you're carrying your laptop everywhere you go. And
but you shouldn't.
There's no
right?
peace in that. Exactly.
No,
That's
you
what
can
I'm
unplug.
saying. There's no peace in that. But I think it does take time to find that right person and to really get it to the place, like you said, where you could hand it off and trust them with it.
And that's why I say you should have more. I really think you should have more than one. You should have two.
Yeah, I think
right?
that's
you should be a team of 3, and you could just kind of rotate around, because you know sometimes 2 people may be out, but then you've got that one. And like I said, my clients never really very rarely did they use that person, except if there was an emergency or if they needed to know how to get into WordPress, because they're like, okay, I know how to add a page, but I can't figure out how to log in, right? They could talk to them and they can walk them through that. The other thing, if you're going to have a trusted partner, is you know, we signed each other's subcontractor agreement, confidentiality agreement, because they're in your business, you're in their business, and then you need to agree on payment, right? If you're going to pay each other, if you're not going to pay each other, you figure that out between the 3 of you or 2 of you, and do what works the best for the 2 of you. But it does take time, and you know, don't be afraid to ask somebody. If you're like, you know what, we have a connection, I like you. How about if we try out being trusted partners? Why not? Answer's no until you ask anyways. So, you know, ask them.
Good point.
Ask them and see. But you really, that's one of the things that I really push to people who are solo. Now, if you have a team, you've got a team that you could, if there's a right-hand person, right, they can step in for you. But if you don't have a team, that trusted partner is the way to go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I did want to also, for everybody that's viewing live, we would love for you to post questions or anything you want to ask or comment about. We would love to have you put that on the page, because we are watching the feed. And so if you have anything, I don't want to leave this, you know, today with questions still. So we would love to answer those for you. So please just write them down and we'll keep an eye on that. And I think that the other thing, I know that we talked about having systems in place and all of that. And one of those systems I know that you did speak of was like an operations manual. So why do you think that's so important, like before hiring, to be able to have like a systems, you know, that operations manual that you can hand off to that person?
Right. So for me, I had several documents. So I have a business policies document, and that's for my clients, so they understand my boundaries. They understand, you know, if you're going to ask me to work, you know, if you're late on a deadline and you ask me to do something, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay extra for that because it's a rush fee. If you want me to work on weekends, so okay, so that's business policies. Then I have an operations manual, and the operations manual is internal to me, how I run my entire business, right? How do I onboard a new client? What documents do they get? When do I bill for retainers? What tools do I use? What happens if a client and I part ways? What's that look like? And all those kind of things. And so that's my operations. But I also have a subcontractor manual. So I have manuals for everything. The subcontractor manual is specific to the so it answers their questions. So it takes the pieces out of the ops manual that says this is how I deal with subcontractors. And this also talks to how the subcontractors deal with me, deal with my clients, what tools I use, you know, when they're paid, how they're paid, you know, what my expectations are, right? Very clear. Always should have expectations up front, so there's no gray areas. How I communicate. So I actually have an operations manual that has everything in it, and then I take the subcontractor piece of that and I put it in a sub-manual, and that's what they get, because they don't need to know everything else about my business. Right. Unless you're my right hand, you don't need to know all, you know, what's behind the curtain, right? You just need to know what's important for you to know. And so that's the subcontractor manual, and it, you know, talks about if you do meetings, you know, not client meetings, but team meetings. How often do you do them? Are they paid for that time, right? You know, if they're required to do status reports for their customers, how do they keep you in the loop of what's going on with your clients? All that kind of stuff is in the sub-manual. And the reason those are important, again, is because if you hire somebody, you just hand on the manual. Say, read this, and then get back to me on your questions, versus you having to take time to go over all of these things because it's not written down. And what if you hire 5 people at the same time and they all have to do 5 different meetings? Well, your time is not being used effectively, right? So by having that in place, that allows you to hand that off and put the onus on them. Say, okay, here, Nanette, here's my sub. Could you read that manual and then come back to me with questions? We'll go over it. And, I'll go through and highlight the things that are my expectation. And if you have any questions, my door's open. So it starts that conversation, and then it's very clear to them if they're like, well, why didn't I get paid? And they're like, okay, I'll go to the submed. Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be on the 1st, not the 15th, right? All that information's there, okay? And it's a living, breathing document, which means it changes based on, based on your business and what your business needs are.
Right. And did you start doing that? I mean, did you work with one person? I'm thinking in my head, okay,
sure.
So I have this one person, I can do that with that, find all the tweak it till I get it where it works, and then from there maybe bring on, feel secure enough to bring on somebody else.
Yeah. And, I actually, like I said, I subcontracted for many businesses when I first started because I wasn't really sure, how everything. I had never run a business, right? I'd always been a corporate employee, and I learned very quickly what not to do and what to do based on the subcontracting firms that I went. I mean, there were a couple of them that were just stellar. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. There are others that was like not good for me, right? I was their nightmare. Because I was constantly asking questions. I'm like, well, where's this? How do I do that? And I'm like, oh my God. So my point is that I took away the good parts of all of that and came up with my own system. And one of the things I really liked was a couple of them had those subcontractor manuals, which is just awesome because it's like, wow, it's like an employee handbook. Woohoo! I know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Right? So the operations manual is important for your business. The business policy is important for your clients, and the subcontractor handbook, or what you want to call it, is important for your team because it really tells them what.
I think it's important.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important that you said it is a living document because, as Nanette said, you may have that one, and you may have some guidelines, but because, especially for those just starting out, because a lot of the people that watch are just beginning and want to know how do I start this whole process. I think that, yeah, absolutely, we should have these in place and ready, and you might have some ideas of what that's to look like. But then as it begins to really run and function, then you're going to say, oh, well, I don't really want that to be part, and really I wanted this, and, those kind of things. And so I think it's important that those that are just beginning really know that, well, it's like with anything, you have the outlines of it, and a lot of things in place. But you don't have to be, have it absolutely exactly what it's going to look 2 months from now.
Right.
It's always changing. So I think that was a great point.
Yeah, it's not rigid.
Right.
Flexibility is key. You just and don't look at others. Here's a big thing. Is I have all my forms and stuff that I use on my business. I have them on my website. I have a bunch that are free and have a bunch that I sell. Right? They're like $5 a piece. But my point is they're just the outlines. You have to learn to trust yourself, right? Because what people I've done in some of my classes that I teach, I'll give them one of my manuals and I say, go make it your own, and they bring it back and it's me. I'm like, I'm reading my own writing. I go, you know what? Don't be me, be you. I'm already taken, right? I'm already here. Be you. Be authentic. So I think the problem is people are afraid to trust themselves. They feel like they have to copy, and I don't mean blatantly copy. I mean copy someone. No, because your clients aren't working with me. They're working with you.
Right.
Your team's not working with me. They're working with you. My point is if you take somebody's form or template, make it yours. Trust yourself enough to know that you know what to do and how you want to run your business. Don't run your business like me. Run it like you. And I think that's where a lot of VAs, and this is just from what I see from talking to new VAs, is they're like, what would you do? Doesn't matter what I would do. What would you do? It's your business. I can tell you what I would do, and you may go, oh, God, I'd never do that. Well, that's okay. Right? You have to learn to just trust yourself. And if you know what, and if you screw it up, oh, well, throw it away,
you learn.
Start over.
That's right. You learn the most from your mistakes, because you don't forget it.
No, you don't. So when it comes to any of those templates and stuff, just make it yours. I mean, all I do is give you what I did that worked for me. So it'll give you the outline to start with, and then you could yank out the pieces you don't want, put in pieces that you do want, but it really does come back to trusting yourself.
Right.
You know what to do.
Great. We do have a quick question on the board, if I can interrupt for 1 moment. Yeah, Angela is saying that she's finally at a point where she needs to add someone to her team, but not certain how to go forward with regard to paying them. How would you handle that, especially if you want to start out as a probationary status? I'll get it out here in a minute. So, Susan, what would you recommend for her?
Well, as I said, payment has to be made in one way, shape, or form, whether that's cash, whether that's mentoring, whether that's training. You can determine that, because remember, you're always further ahead than somebody else. You always have a lot more knowledge than somebody else. So, you know, if you're thinking that you want to pay them, now here's another thing that I see. This is kind of open for, I don't want to say argument, for discussion, is that some people pay their subcontractors their full rate, others pay a discounted rate. So when I was a subcontractor, I always knocked 25% off my rate, because I'm not doing the heavy lifting. You guys are giving me clients. All I got to do is work, right? I don't have to run a business. All I have to do is you give me work, I do the work, and I send it back. So my point to you is you have to determine how you're going to price your team. Do you want to pay them their full rate? Obviously, you have to pass that on to your clients. Or are they going to be at a discounted rate? Some people will take you in at whatever your rate is. Others say, this is my rate, right? I'll pay you $35 an hour. Yes or no? Right? So there's no. So my point is you need to make that determination first. What are you going to pay? How are you going to pay? Is it going to be, I don't want to say bartering, but you know, is it where you're going to pay for time and knowledge, or are you going to pay cash? And if you're going to pay cash, how much are you going to pay them? That's big. And then you also have to figure out how you're going to pay. This is a huge discussion, and I've seen lots of arguments about this. You know what, guys? It's your business. It doesn't matter. Make a decision. If the person doesn't like how you pay, well, then they're not for your team, right? So if you want to pay them by PayPal, pay them by PayPal. If you want to pay them by check, pay them by check. If you want to pay them by direct transfer, pay them by direct. Whatever. Make your decision and make it clear. The issues that people have is when there's ambiguity. It's not clear. Well, I'm not sure. Do you pay me by check, or do you pay me by direct transfer? And if you just tell people this is how it is, then they have a choice, right?
I think it's important to have it in the contract, Susan, too, because you know you're going to have that contract with them, and I think it's so important to make sure that you put in there this is, because I know for me, I'm not at a point in the business where I could just write them a check. I have to be paid by my client, and then I can pay them. You know, that's really, I mean, sometimes I can, but you know what I'm saying. And that's in the contract. When the client pays because the work was good, then I'm going to pay them. And so I think that's really important to put that in. You know, this is your rate. This is what, you know, the expectations and what, you know, what it is. And that the fact that we're going to be paying you by check or, like you said, direct transfer, and it'll be on, you know, this day more than likely, or immediately after I get paid.
Right. As long as it's clear.
Right.
As long as you're clear in your contract and you're clear, I would also put that in my subcontractor manual, because that's important. Because let's face it, not everybody reads a contract. Hey, just show me where I need to sign. All right, whoop, sign, done. But if you give them the sub-manual and you actually go through it, so whenever I would bring on a team member, we go through the sub-manual, because I don't want you coming back to me and going, well, I didn't know that. I gave you the manual. We went through it together. I have them initial certain things. So you can't come back and say, well, I didn't know that. You read it. I have your initials. You also signed the contract. Sometimes you don't get into that. You don't want to get into one of those situations. So, yeah, it should be in the contract, but I would call it out, and I would also call it out in the sub-manual. Anything that has to do with money, it should always be called out, because that way you don't have that issue. Right? So hopefully I've answered Angela's question, but it really does come down to how do you want to pay them and how much you want to pay them. Those are the things you really need to think of first, because that's the first thing someone's going to ask you, right? Well, how do I get paid and how much are you paying me? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, that there have been, like you said, a lot of discussions on, even percentages? What do we pay? What is the general consensus?
But there's no standard.
Some people, no, there isn't. And it is your business. And I think it's up to you to know what that is, whether it's 60-40, 50-50, 80-20, I mean, whatever, 100%. I know some that just do 100%, they get it all, but it is your business.
Right.
So there has to be a little something that you're getting from obtaining the client and doing those things too, and billing, having to invoice the client and all of that.
Exactly. And you're running the business and you're giving them work. So I'm just telling you my side is that they're doing the heavy lifting.
Right.
They're doing the work. But you should still get something for that because you're giving them the clients and you're maintaining the relationship and you're doing all the back end stuff. It's almost like when you go to work for somebody, they're paying you for your knowledge, but they're doing all the other stuff behind the scenes. They're making sure you get paid, you get benefits and all that. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just make sure that it works for you, whatever that decision is.
We have another question
on
the board. Pam asks, is it customary to pay your subcontractor when they finish a specific project or once the client pays you? And again, I think that's up for discussion, and everybody's business is different.
Yeah.
But what would you say to that, Susan?
What I would do is, I would make sure that, let me back up. So it depends on how your business is structured, right? Are you on retainer? Are you on package? How do you pay, right? Or do you pay after the work is done? So 3 ways to get paid. You invoice for when it's done, you pay up front, or you do a package, okay? And just so I'm clear, a retainer is not a package. A retainer is a bucket of hours that clients can use however they want for whatever they want. A package has defined deliverables. There's my PM term for the day. And that just basically means that you are telling them exactly what they're getting for exactly that price. Okay? So that's the difference. So and this is my definition. So when I'm talking, you'll understand where I'm coming from, right? So it really depends on how you're getting paid. So if it's a package, which means they built them a website, right? You build a WordPress website, and the client pays you when it's finished, right? They may pay you 50 up front and 50 at the end. My point is that when it's done and delivered, then you could pay your sub because the work is done for that. If they're doing ongoing work, what I did was my clients would pay me at the first of the month, and the first thing I would pay was my subcontractors because they're doing ongoing work every month for somebody. Okay. If obviously I invoice them after the work is done, they don't get paid until I get paid. Does that make sense? So there's 3 different ways right there. It depends on your business, depends on your business structure and your business model on when and how you pay them. Make sense? I can't
Absolutely.
Hear you. There you are. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I try to mute in case I make background noises, but I've had a cough, so I just want to interrupt. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I do think that is so true that there are different ways to do it depending on how you are getting paid. Because obviously, as the business owner and the structure of the business itself, if you're not getting paid, you can't pay your subcontractors. So it does have to, I think it depends on all of that. Nanette, did you have anything to add?
No, it opens up, you just need to have that in place, I would think, before you start with someone. And also, it just makes me think, I'm going to make sure that with my client how the payment structure is going to be before I even bring on a VA. Because that's determined.
Right, you have to have your ducks in a row. So this goes back to why you have processes in place. Right. Well, you need to have your ducks in a row before you can take on a team, because if you are scattered and all over the place, guess what? You're going to have a second nightmare. There's so much more complexity, to your business when you add a team.
Right.
So if your business is a mess before you add, you're going to compound that problem. Right? So you need to have those processes to make sure that, okay, it's going to be smooth sailing because you are adding that complexity. Right? So you want to be on solid ground when you add that. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. It's going to crumble.
Absolutely.
The more you add to it.
And so that
I agree with you more.
Yeah. What's a few effective ways to train a subcontractor so you know that they can work with your clients independently?
So for me, I said I really rely on that intern thing for me. I want somebody underneath me, if you will, for a while, because I get a feel for how you are and how you work and how you communicate. But if you don't have that luxury, I go back to either A, offering some training, right? On just basic customer service, basic what you expect, right? So if you're like, I need you to return all emails to clients within 24 hours, right? Or within whatever that is. And then, you know, making sure that you offer some kind of training that allows them to understand your expectations. So I would say customer service training, right? I mean, you could put together a very simple customer service training that you could go over with each of your team members before they can be turned loose, if you will. And that's above and beyond if you're doing any testing or any of that kind of stuff. But I would do some customer service training because everybody has a different way to run their business. And you could just, like I said, you could do a little video, you could do a little checklist. And I would say for me, that would be one of the best things to do. I love checklists, and obviously I do a lot of video, so I would do a combination, saying, okay, here's this, and I would also scenario play, right? Say, okay, well, what happens if you get somebody who's just in orbit? They are livid about something. How do you handle that? Right? As a team member, how do you handle that? Do you say, oh, throwing that fence up, throwing over the fence to Susan because I don't want to handle it, right? Is that acceptable to you or not? Do you want them to try to calm things down, or would you rather just go ahead and get into it, you know, get in the middle and let you handle that with your client? Because so, you know, have some basic customer service, but I would also throw some role playing in there so they understand if somebody, you know, the wheels fall off the bus, what are they supposed to do? Right? Are they supposed to take it to you, or do you have somebody to take it to, or and what kind of power do they have? Right? You know, do they have the power to make decisions? One of the best things I have in my life is that I actually worked for a small business when I was in my late 20s, and he was a small bit. He basically gave me an MBA education because I was a manager, and he said, you know what, you have the power to make any decision you need, Susan. If somebody's unhappy, fix it, and then come and tell me how you fixed it. And so we had a lot of power, and so I believe that for my team, I say, if somebody's pissed off, fix it. And then tell me what you did. Give them back their money, whatever it is. Fix it, handle it, and then come and say, Susan, this is what I did. So if you give people power, it really does make a difference for them to make a decision, right? So if that's something you're willing to do, you need to make sure that you share that. Say, you know what, if the client's pissed off, then fix it. How are we going to fix it? Fix it. And then tell me.
And I think it goes back to that trust again. And building that team. And I think that you don't immediately, I think you would say this, you don't immediately hand over that power, but that you've already vetted them and brought them to this place where you can say, okay, you're ready now. Yeah. And hand it over then. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But that should be something that you would obviously address in going on. You know, if someone's been with you for 6 months and they're stellar, then you could come back and say, you have the power. Do what you need. Because I think people appreciate
And you know what? I agree. And I think we've gone over some really great things. We're down to the last couple of minutes. So I know. Can you believe it? I just can't believe it. It always goes so fast. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. And I guess, to me, you know, one of the questions we were going to ask is how do you avoid hiccups between the client, between you and the sub and all of those things. But it seems like it comes back to what you're saying, Susan, is those things you have in place prior. You know, that manual, the subcontractor manual, the contracts, all of those things in place, then everything else, you're going to sometimes come up with some unusual circumstances that you're going to have to look at as the business owner. But in general, when you have that trusted person, you know, then you're okay, and you're handing it over to them to be able to handle it.
Right, and if you have all this stuff in place, there's no real, I mean, if the wheels fall off the bus, you have procedures and policies in place to handle it. Now, you know, there will always be hiccups in life. There will always be something that you are not prepared to handle. You're like, oh God, where did that come from? But you have a foundation to build upon. If you don't have that, then you're just continuing to stress, because what you're doing is you're building the plane while it's flying. Okay, I don't know about you, but I don't want to fly on an airplane that's in air as they're, you know, patching the wings on, and you know what I mean? You know, the wheels don't work because we can't land. That's basically what you're doing. Right? And not many people like to fly that way. So put it together before you need it, And I mean, there's certain things you can build as you fly, but not your processes and not your business structure.
Absolutely. That's a great point and a great place to end because we are out of time.
That did go by fast.
Yeah, it did. Now, I just want everybody to know, Susan, give your website so they can find you for some wonderful courses.
Yeah.
Okay. My website is The Techie. So Techie is Techie, Mentor, Mentor. So thetechiementor.com. That is my main website where you will find all kinds of I have tons of free training. I have tons of free forums. I have sections for established and new virtual assistants, as well as transitioning. Those are transitioning out of employment into the world of VA. And I also have another site called the VA School, which is really a great place for people who want to save some money and get some training. So you could take a look at that.
Yeah, I've been there and I love it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Well, thank you guys.
Right,
I certainly appreciate it. I really enjoyed chatting with everybody. Hopefully we got their questions answered.
Great.
Yes, I think we did.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Happy Valentine's